My husband abandoned me on sick bed. The hospital room smelled like death and broken promises. I watched Marcus pack his leather duffel bag while I lay there, tubes snaking from my arms like accusations. My body was ravaged by cancer, my hair gone, my spirit shattered into a million pieces. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah," he said without looking at me. His voice was cold, detached, like he was canceling a subscription instead of abandoning his wife of 12 years. "Marcus, please." My voice cracked. "The doctor said I need someone. You need chemotherapy. You need nurses. You don't need me." He zipped the bag with finality. "I'm 38 years old. I didn't sign up to be a caretaker." Tears burned my eyes. "You promised. In sickness and in health." He finally looked at me, and what I saw there was worse than hatred. It was indifference. "I lied," he said simply. "Jessica's waiting in the car. She's pregnant, Sarah. I'm starting over with someone who isn't broken." The door clicked shut behind him. That sound echoed in my chest, louder than my heart monitors beeping. I was alone, dying, and utterly destroyed. The nurses found me screaming that night. Not from physical pain, the morphine handled that. This was soul-deep agony, the kind that makes you want to rip the fore from your arm and end everything right there. "Mrs. Patterson, please calm down," Nurse Jennifer whispered, holding my trembling hand. She was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. "He left me," I sobbed. "He just left." She didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she stayed with me past her shift, stroking my bald head like my mother used to do when I was small. When I finally exhausted myself, she brought me tea and said something that would change everything. My mom had stage 3 breast cancer 10 years ago. Her husband left too. She paused. "She's alive today, remarried, and running marathons. He's alone, miserable, and nobody respects him." "I'm not your mom," I whispered. "No," she agreed. "You're Sarah Patterson. And you're going to survive this. Not for him, for you." Something flickered in my chest. Small, fragile, but real. Hope. The chemotherapy was hell-wrapped in agony and served with humiliation. I vomited until there was nothing left, then vomited some more. My veins collapsed from the needle sticks. My mouth filled with sores that made eating torture. Every morning, I woke up hoping yesterday was just a nightmare. But Marcus's side of the bed stayed empty, his cologne fading from the pillows like our marriage had never existed. My phone stayed silent. No calls. No texts. No apologies. My parents were dead. I had no siblings. Most of our friends had been Marcus's colleagues, and they'd naturally sided with him. "It must be so hard on Marcus," someone posted on Facebook. I deleted the app immediately, bile rising in my throat. Dr. Ramirez visited on my worst day. I was sobbing into a bedpan, wishing I could just die already. "Sarah." His voice was firm. "Look at me." I couldn't. I was ashamed, humiliated, broken beyond repair. "Your latest scans show the tumor is shrinking. Do you hear me? It's working. You're winning this fight." Winning? I was dying alone while my husband played house with his mistress. "I don't feel like a winner," I whispered. 3 weeks into treatment, my hospital roommate changed everything. Her name was Margaret Chen, 72, fierce as a dragon and sharp as a knife. "Stop crying over that worthless man," she snapped one night when I was sobbing quietly. "You think you're the first woman to get abandoned? Join the club, honey. You don't understand. My husband left me 40 years ago when I had tuberculosis. Took our savings, our car, and our daughter's college fund. Know what I did?" She grinned, revealing missing teeth. "I survived. Got better. Built a business empire. Made millions." I stared at her. "Really? No, she laughed wickedly. But I did survive, and I lived long enough to dance on his grave last year. That bastard died alone in a nursing home while I was surrounded by grandchildren. Revenge doesn't always look like money, sweetheart. Sometimes it looks like living. Something shifted inside me. The grief didn't disappear, but anger started creeping in, hot, righteous anger that felt better than despair. Teach me, I said. Teach you what? How to survive. Margaret became my unexpected warrior queen mentor. Between her dialysis and my chemo, we plotted my resurrection like generals planning a campaign. First rule, she said, stop checking his social media. I'm not. Liar. I see you crying at your phone every night. Block him. Block her. Block everyone who makes you feel small. She was right. I'd been torturing myself with pictures of Marcus and Jessica, her glowing pregnancy announcement, their vacation photos, his smile that used to belong to me. I blocked them all with shaking fingers. It felt like cutting off a diseased limb. Painful but necessary. Second rule, your body is at war. Treat it like the battlefield it is. Fight for every breath, every meal, every morning you wake up. I started forcing down the hospital food even when it tasted like cardboard and betrayal. I walked the hospital corridors even when my legs felt like lead. I counted each small victory. Made it to the bathroom alone today. Kept breakfast down. Smiled at the nurse. Third rule, Margaret said seriously, make a plan for after. After what? After you survive. Because you will, Sarah. And when you do, you're going to need a life worth living. 4 months into treatment, I was discharged. The cancer was in remission, a fragile, tentative victory that felt surreal. I had survived what was supposed to kill me while my marriage died instead. Coming home was devastating. Our house felt haunted by ghost memories. Marcus had taken his belongings but left mine exactly where they'd been, like a museum dedicated to my old life. I lasted 3 hours before calling a real estate agent. I want to sell everything, I told her. My voice sounded different now, harder, rawer, but stronger. The house, the furniture, all of it. Are you sure? This is a beautiful home. It's a tomb, I interrupted. I need something new. While the house was on the market, I stayed with Jennifer, the nurse who'd held my hand that first terrible night. She had a tiny apartment that smelled like vanilla candles and fresh starts. You're brave, she said one evening. I'm terrified, I admitted. Same thing, she replied. Bravery is just terror that's gotten up and started moving. So I kept moving. The divorce papers arrived via courier on a Tuesday morning. Marcus wanted nothing, no alimony, no property claims, nothing. He just wanted out, wanted me erased from his new life like I'd never existed. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt erased. Disposable. Like 12 years of marriage meant absolutely nothing because I'd gotten sick. My hand shook as I signed the papers. Jennifer sat beside me, silent support. Did you know about Jessica? I asked suddenly. She hesitated. The nurses talked. There were rumors he was seeing someone before your diagnosis. Before. The word detonated in my chest like a grenade. He hadn't left because I got sick. He'd left because I was no longer useful, and cancer gave him the perfect excuse everyone would understand. He's a coward, Jennifer said firmly. And history won't be kind to him. History doesn't care about people like me. Then make it care. Write your story, Sarah. Document everything. Let the world know what he did. That night, I opened my laptop for the first time in months. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling with rage and grief and something new, purpose. I started typing. My blog, Surviving After Abandonment, went live at midnight. I wrote everything, the diagnosis, his betrayal, the hospital nights when I begged God to just let me die. I wrote about the shame, the isolation, the brutal realization that the man I loved had never truly existed. I didn't expect anyone to read it. I just needed to scream into the void. By morning, I had 50 comments. By afternoon, 5,000. By week's end, my story had gone viral, shared by cancer survivors, divorced women, and people who'd experienced betrayal so profound it rewrote their DNA. "You're not alone," they wrote. "This happened to me too. Thank you for being brave. Your story gave me permission to leave my abusive partner." But not everyone was supportive. Marcus's friends attacked me online. "She's lying for attention. He had every right to leave, she was a burden. Gold digger trying to destroy his reputation." Each comment was a knife, but I'd already survived dying. Mean words couldn't kill me anymore. Then Jennifer showed me something that changed everything, a message from a literary agent in New York. "Your story is powerful. Have you considered writing a book?" My heart stopped. A book? Me? Writing the book was like performing surgery on my own soul. Every chapter required excavating buried trauma, examining wounds I'd tried to forget, reliving pain that still felt fresh and bleeding. But something magical happened in the process. The more I wrote about my suffering, the less power it had over me. The story that had defined me, abandoned, broken, dying, transformed into something else. Survival. Resilience. Rebirth. Margaret visited regularly, now cancer-free herself. She'd read my drafts and make brutal edits with a red pen. "Stop making excuses for him here," she'd snap. "He was cruel. Say it plainly. I don't want to sound bitter." "You are bitter. Own it. Bitterness isn't weakness, Sarah. It's clarity. It's your body rejecting poison." She was right. I rewrote those sections with honesty that scared me. I admitted I'd fantasized about Marcus getting sick, about Jessica leaving him, about him begging for forgiveness I'd never give. "There," Margaret said, satisfied. "Now you're telling the truth." The book took 8 months to complete. When I typed the end, I cried, not from sadness, but from exhausted triumph. I'd created something permanent from temporary pain. The publication of Abandoned. A survivor's story happened quietly at first. A small press, modest marketing, low expectations. I attended a book signing in a tiny independent bookstore where 7 people showed up, 6 were friends, 1 was lost. But then something unexpected happened. A famous actress posted about my book on Instagram. This story broke me and rebuilt me in one sitting. Every woman needs to read this. Overnight, everything exploded. My book hit bestseller lists. Interview requests flooded in, podcasts, morning shows, magazines. Everyone wanted to hear about the woman whose husband abandoned her during chemotherapy and who transformed that betrayal into triumph. I said yes to everything. Not for revenge, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel sweet. I did it because somewhere out there, another woman was lying in a hospital bed, watching her partner pack a bag, thinking her life was over. I needed her to know it wasn't. The day I appeared on a major morning show, I wore a bright red dress and my hair, finally grown back, styled beautifully. I looked healthy, happy, alive. "Do you have any message for your ex-husband?" the host asked. I smiled. "Thank you for leaving. You freed me." 6 months after the book's release, I used my royalties to start a foundation, the Abandoned But Not Broken Project. We provided financial assistance, counseling, and community support for people abandoned by partners during serious illness. The need was devastating. Hundreds of people reached out immediately, men and women left during cancer treatments, heart attacks, strokes, mental health crises. Their stories were mine, reflected infinite times, each one breaking my heart and strengthening my resolve. "Society doesn't talk about this," said Dr. Martinez, the psychologist I hired. "Medical abandonment by intimate partners is shockingly common, but victims feel too ashamed to speak up." "Not anymore," I said firmly. We're going to make noise. We organized support groups, created legal resources, partnered with hospitals. When insurance companies tried to deny coverage to abandoned patients, we fought them. When employers threatened to fire people taking medical leave, we intervened. Jennifer joined full-time as our nurse advocate. Margaret became our board president, terrifying donors into generosity with her sharp tongue and sharper business sense. "You built something real," Margaret said proudly one evening. "Something that will outlive all of us." I looked around the bustling office, volunteers answering phones, counselors meeting with clients, hope being manufactured from suffering. Marcus had tried to erase me. Instead, I'd become permanent. 2 years after he left, I ran into Marcus and Jessica at a restaurant. My heart should have raced, but it didn't. I felt nothing except mild curiosity about whether he'd aged as poorly as I hoped. He had. He looked tired, diminished, haunted. Jessica looked exhausted, bouncing a crying baby while Marcus stared at his phone. He saw me and froze. Recognition flickered across his face, shock, guilt, something that might have been regret. I was with Daniel, a fellow cancer survivor I'd met at a foundation fundraiser. He was kind, patient, scarred by his own battles, and he looked at me like I was precious. "Sarah," Marcus stood awkwardly. "You look good." "I'm alive," I said simply. "Despite your best efforts." Jessica's eyes widened. She knew who I was, everyone did now. My book, my interviews, my foundation. I was no longer the disposable sick wife. I was Sarah Patterson, survivor and advocate. "I wanted to apologize," Marcus started. "Don't," I interrupted. "I don't need your apology. I needed you 2 years ago, and you weren't there. I don't need anything from you now." Daniel's hand found mine, steady and warm. "I hope you're happy," Marcus said weakly. "I am," I replied honestly. Finally. We left them there, frozen in their miserable little tableau. The 3rd anniversary of my diagnosis fell on a bright October morning. I woke up in my new apartment, small but mine, filled with plants and books and evidence of living, and felt something unfamiliar. Peace. The cancer remained in remission. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about my 5-year survival rates. My body still bore scars, physical and emotional, but they were battle wounds now, not sources of shame. I'd learned to exist in the space between grateful to be alive and angry about what I'd lost. Both feelings were valid. Both were true. The foundation was thriving. We'd helped over 300 people in 2 years. My second book was scheduled for release in spring, a practical guide for medical abandonment survivors. Daniel proposed last month. I said yes, but slowly, carefully. I trusted him, but I'd learned trust should be earned repeatedly, not given freely. "I'm not afraid of your past," he'd said. "I'm honored you survived long enough for me to find you." That's when I knew. Margaret called that afternoon. 3 years, warrior queen. "How do you feel?" "Alive," I said. "Genuinely, beautifully alive." "Good. Now keep going. The world needs your noise." The awards ceremony felt surreal. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence was honoring our foundation for advocacy work. I stood backstage in a borrowed gown, my hands shaking with nervousness and disbelief. "You've got this," Jennifer whispered. She'd become my closest friend, my sister in all the ways that mattered. When they called my name, the applause was thunderous. I walked to the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, survivors, advocates, people who understood that abandonment during illness was a form of violence. 3 years ago, I was dying alone in a hospital room, I began, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to choke me. The man I loved looked at my bald head, my frail body, and decided I wasn't worth staying for. The room went silent. He thought leaving me would break me. And it did, for a while. But broken things can be rebuilt, and sometimes they're stronger for having shattered. I told my story, abbreviated but honest. I saw people crying, nodding, recognizing themselves in my words. To everyone who's been abandoned when they needed someone most, your worth isn't determined by who stayed. It's determined by the fact that you're still here, still fighting, still breathing. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. I stood there, tears streaming, finally understanding what victory actually looked like. Marcus's name appeared in my email 6 months later. The subject line read, "Please read this." I should have deleted it immediately. Instead, curiosity won. I opened it. "Sarah, I know I have no right to contact you. Jessica and I separated 3 months ago. She said I'm emotionally unavailable, incapable of real intimacy. She's right. Watching your success, reading about your foundation, seeing you happy, it's destroyed me. I made the worst mistake of my life leaving you. I was scared, selfish, and cruel. If there's any chance you could forgive me, any possibility we could talk." I read it twice, waiting to feel something. Triumph? Vindication? Pain? Nothing came except pity. This broken man begging for absolution wasn't the monster I'd needed him to be. He was just pathetic. A coward who'd realized too late that he'd destroyed something irreplaceable. I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't something I owed him, and engaging would only give him power he didn't deserve. Instead, I forwarded the email to my therapist with a note, "Look how far I've come." He's still stuck in that hospital room. Then I deleted it and went to lunch with Daniel, where we laughed about wedding plans and argued about honeymoon destinations. My future was too bright to waste time on my past. The 5-year cancer-free mark arrived like a miracle wrapped in ordinary Tuesday morning light. Dr. Ramirez hugged me, a breach of professional protocol he didn't care about. "You did it, Sarah. 5 years. The odds of recurrence dropped dramatically now." I cried in his office, releasing 5 years of held breath and suspended hope. Jennifer, who'd come with me, cried too. "I'm actually going to live," I whispered, the reality finally sinking in. "You've been living, honey," Jennifer said. "Now you just get to keep doing it." That evening, we threw a party at the Foundation's office. Survivors filled the space, people I'd helped, people who'd helped me, people whose stories intertwined with mine in the messy tapestry of trauma and healing. Margaret gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry simultaneously. Sarah Patterson was supposed to die alone and forgotten. Instead, she became unforgettable and built a community that won't let anyone die alone again. That's not survival. That's resurrection. Daniel pulled me aside during the celebration. "I'm so proud of you." "For not dying?" I joked weakly. "For living," he corrected. "Really, fully, beautifully living despite everything trying to stop you." That night, I realized something profound. Marcus's abandonment had been the worst thing and the best thing that ever happened to me. Whitehead Talk, The Power of Surviving Your Worst Day, was scheduled for spring. Standing on that famous red, looking at 2,000 faces and millions more watching online, I felt the weight of every abandoned person who couldn't speak for themselves. "We live in a society that romanticizes standing by sick loved ones," I began. "We celebrate the devoted spouse, the loyal partner who stays in sickness and in health. But we don't talk about how common it is for people to leave when things get hard." I shared statistics that made the audience gasp. Research showing men leave seriously ill wives at 6 times the rate women leave seriously ill husbands. Stories of people abandoned during cancer, stroke recovery, mental health crises. "I'm not here to make you hate my ex-husband," I continued. "I'm here to change the conversation. Medical abandonment isn't a personal failure of the abandoned, it's a societal failure to value caregiving, to support people during crisis, to treat vulnerability as strength rather than weakness." The talk went viral immediately. Millions of views, thousands of comments, news coverage worldwide. Politicians started discussing healthcare support for abandoned patients. Hospitals implemented new protocols. One comment stayed with me: "I was packing my bags to leave my sick wife." I watched your talk. I unpacked. Thank you for saving my marriage. Maybe I couldn't save everyone. But I could save someone. The documentary crew followed me for 6 months, filming the Foundation's work, interviewing survivors, and yes, trying to get Marcus on camera. He refused, of course he did. Cowards don't like permanent records of their cowardice. But Jessica agreed to be interviewed. I didn't know she'd said yes until the director told me. Why would she do that? I asked, genuinely confused. Watch the footage, he replied. In the interview, Jessica looked worn down, sad, older than her 32 years. I thought I was getting a successful businessman and a fresh start, she said quietly. Instead, I got a man haunted by what he'd done. He talked about Sarah constantly, her strength, her survival, her success. I was competing with a ghost he'd created and could never defeat. She paused, tears forming. What he did to Sarah was unforgivable. I didn't know the full story when we got together. He said they'd grown apart, that she wanted the divorce. When her book came out, I realized I'd been part of something terrible. Do you regret it? The interviewer asked. Every day. I have a son who will someday Google his father and find out he's the man who abandoned his dying wife. How do I explain that? How do I tell him his father is a cautionary tale? I watched the footage 3 times, feeling something unexpected, compassion. 6 years after Marcus left, I married Daniel in a small ceremony surrounded by chosen family. Survivors who'd become friends, advocates who'd become sisters, Margaret who'd become the mother I'd lost. I wore ivory instead of white, a nod to the fact that I'd lived an entire life before this moment. My hair was long again, decorated with real flowers. I was 41 years old, cancer-free, genuinely happy. You look beautiful, Margaret whispered before I walked down the makeshift aisle in the Foundation's community room. I look alive, I corrected, and we both laughed. Daniel cried when he saw me. His vows were simple and perfect, I promised to stay. In sickness and health isn't just wedding poetry to me, it's a commitment I'll honor every single day. You've taught me what real strength looks like, and I'm honored to stand beside you. I spoke my vows with a steady voice. You've shown me that betrayal doesn't have to define my capacity for trust. That being abandoned once doesn't mean I'll be abandoned again. I choose you, every day, with full knowledge that choosing again is the bravest thing I can do. There was no wedding cake. Instead, we served cookies from the bakery run by a survivor our foundation had helped. There was no formal reception, just dancing, laughing, and celebrating the miraculous fact that I'd survived long enough to find genuine love again. 10 years after my diagnosis, the foundation had helped over 5,000 people and influenced healthcare policy in 12 states. My 3rd book became required reading in medical schools, teaching future doctors about the psychological impact of medical abandonment. I stood in our new headquarters, a beautiful building funded by donations and book royalties, and felt the ghost of that broken, abandoned woman I'd been fade completely. She'd served her purpose. She'd screamed her pain so others wouldn't suffer silently. But I didn't need to carry her anymore. Margaret had passed away the previous year, peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by the grandchildren she'd mentioned so long ago in that hospital room. At her funeral, I'd given the eulogy. She taught me that surviving isn't enough, you have to live loudly enough that death gets annoyed and leaves you alone. My phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer, speaking at the hospital today. Told them about the night I met you. 20 medical students cried. You're changing the world, Sarah. I looked around the office, counselors meeting with clients, volunteers organizing support groups, lives being rebuilt from rubble. Marcus had tried to erase me by leaving. Instead, he'd freed me to become someone far greater than the woman I'd been. I was Sarah Patterson, survivor, author, advocate, wife, and proof that your worst day doesn't have to be your last day. The ending I'd written for myself was so much better than anything he could have given me. Victory isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just waking up happy, choosing love again, and building something beautiful from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. I'd won by living. And I wasn't done yet. The end.